talk about gas tanks. These are probably the most hazardous things that you're going to fool with when you're messing with an old car. If you've got a problem with this gas tank where it has to be cut open for some reason, you want to get a dent straightened out of the bottom, or you got a problem with a pickup tube or anything, you're going to have to take it to a radiator shop or to a strip tank to get it boiled out, cleaned out, and let them cut it open. That way you can make your repairs to the inside.
Once he boils this tank out and cuts an opening, whether he takes the top off or just cuts a little opening for you, it's just like a piece of sheet metal. It's no longer dangerous, just like a fender. You can hammer on it, do whatever you want to it. This tank of ours was full of rust and old gas, stale gas. We took it to the radiator shop. He boiled it out. When we got it back, it still had some fine, scaly rust in it. What we did, we used this gas tank etch. You pour it in, you slush it all around, you take the tank, turn it upside down, roll it all over. You let it set in the tank for about 30 minutes. You come back, you do it again. You do it 3 times. When you're finished, you drain it out, you let it set for about a day until it's totally dry inside. Next thing we're going to do with it, now that we have that done, we're going to put a plastic liner, a gas tank sealer in here. It'll dry like a plastic lining. All that rust will be sealed. Anything that's left in there will be sealed down. And this particular sealer we have, they make 2 different types. This particular sealer is made to withstand alcohol in gas, which you get a lot of today. If you use the earlier type sealer, it'll come off just a gooey mess. I'm going to let Ray put this sealer in this tank. This gives off toxic fumes. Ray's going to wear a mask. Whenever you use something like that, make sure you read the instructions. When this tank was made new, the people that made this sheet metal coated this sheet metal with something called Turncoat. Kept the tank from rusting for a long period of time. They coat it on both sides, and the factory just stamps it out and welds it together. That all has deteriorated now. That's why we're going to coat this, or it'll just rust again on us. Ray's going to seal that up, then he's going to pick up his tank and he's going to turn it in all different directions to make sure everything is coated inside. If this has got some baffles in it, you even have to do this more so because you'll have a hard time getting that through the baffles. And the baffles themselves have to be coated because they probably have got some rust on them too. Ray's going to take that outside, and he's going to keep a check on that about every 10 or 15 minutes. He's going to turn it and twist it and make sure that we don't create any puddles in it, make sure that everything drains back out of it. There's a couple other things that you have to watch. You've got to keep an eye on that filler tube. It'll fill up with that plastic. You can take an old speedometer cable like this on an electric drill and run it down through there and clean it out. That really makes a handy gadget. And you need to take an air hose and blow it out. Make sure it stays free or you're going to plug it up. You're not going to get any gas out of it. Next thing we want to talk about is what we're going to do with that tank when we get this all sealed and ready to go. We're going to wire brush it, sand it, scrape it, metal prep it, and we're going to paint it. A lot of people use black enamel. Makes a beautiful job on a tank. A lot of people want it to look like the original bare metal. This is called Cast Blast. This will make it look like the original metal. There are any number of different types of this stuff on the market that you can use. You don't have to use this particular one. Another thing we want to talk about. This is preservative to put in the gas. If you store your car in the wintertime and you don't use it and it sets for 4 or 5 months, You need to put this in the tank. You need to run it a little bit, make sure it goes through the fuel pump and the carburetor. Gasoline has a shelf life of about 4 months. After that, it starts to spoil. You'll be in this whole process all over again, cleaning out fuel pumps and carburetors and gas tanks if that happens. Another thing I'd like to talk about, if you got a tank that is just maybe has a little bit of rust spots in it, enough to cause you trouble in your carburetor, that little rust flakes get under needle and seat in the carburetor and cause it to flow over. All you have to do, if you don't want to go to this extent, you don't think you need this extent, you need to use something like this filter right in the fuel line pickup. This will pick up all those little particles and you won't have that problem. Just change it every so often. Another thing we want to talk about. Fuel gauge. It's no sense putting this back in that tank if it doesn't work. You get it up underneath the car. It's very simple to check. This is nothing more than an ohm meter. You can see that this is working. This is a good gauge.